The Illuminati One World Order agenda and the APIN legacy. All right, this is a progression of dates that leads up to, at the bottom, it's the present, like the year 2000, where what we're dealing with right now up in Canada is a part of something called the APIN systems. They were the Atlantean Implant Network systems. Crystalline grids that work like microchips, little tiny crystal grids, billions of them, put in very specific configurations into the planetary shields. There's several different of these grids running. This information was introduced in October, parts of it, and it's finally more has been added as far as where Canada fits in. We were never told much about Canada because it was under such high security clearance, because it was such a significant area as far as the grids and what was happening up here in relation to the rest. We learned about the Nibiru and Diotic Crystal Grid program. We talked about that right before we broke. That has been for 25,000 years, or since 25,500 BC. That has been the feeding system for the reverse mathematical programs, scalar wave beams, literally locking and running that program through the grids. Now, there have been distribution centers all over the planet, implanted into the grids. These are Atlantean Pylon Implant Atlantean AP, I can't talk, Atlantean Pylon Implant Network systems. There we go. All right, that's hard to say. APIN is easier. If you can imagine little tiny crystals that hold like microchips, very specific mathematical programs. These are most of these are reverse mathematical programs. There were two very important APINs put in the first seeding, but these were good ones. 5.5 million years ago, when the wall in time was put up after the electric wars, when part of Earth's grids literally got drawn into phantom matrix and the wall in time was put up. There were two grids put in by the guardian races. One was called the Great White Lion and the other was called the Golden Eagle. They were LPIN systems, or actually they were APIN systems, that's a typo. An LPIN would be a Lumerian, which is a little different type of coding. There is one out of all of these that's a Lumerian system that's more powerful than all of the others. Now, the Great White Lion and the Golden Eagle APIN systems were put in 5.5 million years ago, put in the grids to allow Earth to be able to function through a stellar activation cycle. They would make up the difference of the mathematical programs that had been reversed and sent into Phantom, or the parts of the grids that had gone into Phantom. These were like replacement codes that would hold the grids together so the rest of the planet didn't go into Phantom when the stargates opened. So both of them ran off D12 current, which means they had to have a D12 pulse to run on. In 208,216 BC, big problems happened because that's when we went to a 10-code pulse here. We couldn't run D12, so it shut down the greater part of these systems, the Great White Lion and the Golden Eagle. In 75,000 BC, another set of APINs was put in. It was called the Dragon APIN. This was a negative one. It was installed by the Omicron Draconian invader races from Orion. In 25,500 BC, during the Lucifer Rebellion, the Stonehenge Nibiru and Diotic Crystal Grid was installed. Now this thing could plug in to the APIN systems, and it could run them. It could run the reverse programs right through them. So not only would you have the 8-point grid running out from the main Stonehenge area, you would be able to plug that in to all of these other matrices and literally just completely reverse the planetary Merkaba. And when a Stargate cycle happened, you could just drag the grids right down in. And that was why they began putting these in, the negative races. 25,500 BC, this gave energy to the potentials of these technologies, these crystalline technologies. The Nibiru and Anunnaki installed the Nibiru and Diotic crystal grid. The Golden Eagle grid, which was originally one of the founders' race grids, these two grids, the Great White Lion and the Golden Eagle, Great White Lion was the guardian of the verticals, or the axiotonal lines, the vertical line systems, and the Golden Eagle was a guardian of the horizontal ley line systems, and together they created a weaving of frequency that would hold the grids together. Well, during the Lucifer Rebellion, the Golden Eagle APIN was taken over by the Necromaton and Drami Nephilim. This is the Archangel Michael Matrix, okay? They took it over and they started calling it the White Eagle. That's why you get a lot of the White Eagle stuff coming through on the Melchizedek stuff, on the Alpha Omega Order Melchizedeks. They do their White Eagle thing. This is what they're referring to. So they got a hold of this and they blocked it. They literally reversed the whole matrix on it, all the mathematicals on it, and they were using it at different levels for like communication as well as for holding the reversals in the grids. Okay. When they put this in, they put something else in that plugged into it, that amplified it, and literally created a machine of energy that would spin through the planetary grids and progressively reverse everything. It was called the Michael Mary, MM, turnstile Templar control system that ran off the Nibirian Dodic crystal grid. All right, this is what we're going to be dealing with tonight. All right, in 22,500 BC, there was another grid put in by the Eieyani and the Guardian races. It was called the Four Faces of Man, LPIN. It was a Lemurian technology that was more advanced than all the others. And another smaller one called the Blue Oxen, LPIN, was installed. This one was in India. All right, this one was literally global. Okay, it was installed by the Guardians to complete the planetary Christos realignment mission during the 22,326 BC stellar activation cycle. And it was in there to prevent the fallen angelics from drawing Earth and the halls of Amenti into Phantom Matrix. Because of the stalemate that ensued during that stellar activation cycle, we were not able to activate the Four Faces of Man grid. So it has laid dormant ever since, just like all the other ones have. Okay, the final conflict drama is what we're in the middle of now, and what we have been progressively watching, including the issues with the World Trade Center and all of that, have been a progressive activation of the APIN systems. They are sonic pulse activated, and they are a very sophisticated technology. They're sonic scalar pulse. So, now, in 10,500 BC, Luciferian conquest, fallen angelics created the Falcon and Phoenix wormholes, creating in the wall in time, which means they literally burrowed through where there is an open passage between Phantom Matrix again and here. There were 2 points where those came out on the grids. Those wormholes allowed for more frequency to be transmitted back and forth. They could pull more frequency from our grids, and they could blast more frequency through to code our grids the way they wanted to from Phantom. These are becoming a problem. They have been dormant for quite a while. They were capped. The founders capped them in 10,500 BC, and that's how they stopped the Luciferian conquest. They have been progressively open since 1903. The opening began with the Falcon wormhole, and it progressed into opening of the Phoenix, I believe, in 1972. All that information in detail is in the 51 pages that you have here. Okay, now, here we go, between 1903 and 1916, the Zeta Draconian agenda races uncapped the Falcon wormhole and then began activation of the Falcon APIN system. I'll show you these maps in a minute. In 1943, the Philadelphia experiment, the Zetas expanded the Falcon wormhole, creating the Phi X wormhole system, which is a series of wormholes that run off the Falcon that go through like the east coast of the United States. Between 1951 and 1972, the Anunnaki agenda fallen angelics attempted to uncap the Phoenix wormhole so they could activate their APIN systems in hope of winning covert Templar control, because they were at this point, the Draconians had come in, they'd uncapped the Falcon, and they were starting to get control of the grids when the Anunnaki had put so much energy into being the ones that were going to be victorious in this stellar activation cycle. So a battle has ensued ever since, covertly, and it's been run through the political infrastructure of our global culture, literally, who's going to get control of what grids, between the Draconian agenda and the Anunnaki agenda races. Then you had the Nephilim agenda, and they kind of played a little of both sides and had an agenda all their own. They were going to take the place. They weren't even going to bother with anybody else. Both the Draconian races and the Anunnaki races tended to be afraid of the Andrami Necromaton Nephilim, because they are the nastiest matrix known in the fallen angelic system. They have the capacity of 11.5 reverse DNA strands, which means they are D11.5 dark avatars, collectives that get in body. Okay, so as all this is starting to go on, then there was just a lot of craziness. Some of this is in the information you have, like more detail on all of these things. Now, in 1972, the Anunnaki agenda races finally uncapped the Phoenix wormhole. That was theirs, and began activation of the White Eagle. That was our grid that they stole. You know, the Golden Eagle turned, the White Eagle grid. They did this because they began to make deals with the Andrami Necromaton races, with the Archangel Michael matrix. They began to say, okay, well, why don't we help each other? So in 72, they uncapped the Phoenix wormhole and began to activate the White Eagle, the Dove, and the Phoenix APIN systems. This is where all of our channeling broadcast stations are coming from. Okay. Between 1980 and 1983, the Falcon and Dragon APINs were linked via the Zeta Draconian Alliance. They made an alliance between the Omicron Draconian races and all the Zeta races, and that had remained in the drama. In 1983, the Montauk Project was done. the Drac Agenda, Alpha Omega Centauri, Necromaton Andromes, which is a branch of those Andromes that are affiliated with the Nephilim, but they're usually a competing branch. Okay, how am I doing on time? Okay, anyway. They linked the Phi X Falcon wormholes to the White Eagle APIN. So they're linking all these grids together so they can get more power and progressively build up, getting control of the planetary Templar. I'm doing this fast. I mean, we can, slow it down a little later, but I want you to see the history here so you see what we're, in the middle of healing. All right, November 1992, Palladian, Nibiruan, Anunnaki, Galactic Federation, and Ashtar Command, they grudgingly joined the Emerald Covenant Palladian Syrian agreements in fear of losing the Templar battle with the Draconian and Andromi races. Because once the Draconians and Andromis paired up, it didn't look too good for the plain old Anunnaki. Okay, the Draconians had attempted to take over the Phoenix wormhole, and the Anunnaki had failed in their attempt to cap the Falcon wormhole. So they're trying to open theirs and close the others, and so are the other guys. So they're fighting with each other. The Zetas expanded the Falcon Phi X wormhole to avoid the cap that the Anunnaki tried to put on, so they made theirs actually more powerful. This caused Hurricane Andrew on August 24th of 1992. All these things are done with scalar sonic pulse transmissions. All right, these are technologies that even most of our world governments have some degree of knowledge as to how they work, and they usually have a little arsenal of things that they don't tell people about. All right, between 1992 and 1994, Palladian Syrian Agreement Anunnaki, the ones who had made those agreements, used the NDC grid in cooperation with Guardian Templar sites. All right, so here you have a period of time where, because the certain groups of the Palladian Anunnaki, or Palladian Nibiru and Anunnaki, had joined the Emerald Covenant because they knew they were going to lose, so they decided, okay, we'll play with you, founders, right? All right, in through this period, they were working with the founders. They agreed to use their Nibiru data crystal grid to change its program temporarily, right? In cooperation with the Guardians, who agreed to link their sites, all right, the grids that were secured by Guardian races, agreed to link them. What a dumb move to do. When we look back on it, it was really not a smart thing to do. To link their grids into the Nibiru data crystal grid, and they were going to transmit the proper frequencies to temporarily cap the Falcon Phi X wormhole to stop the Draconian races. The Anunnaki began defecting from the Emerald Covenant to go back to their Dominion agendas once the Draconian Zeta forces lost control of the Falcon Phi X wormhole, because this cap was successful. When we combined the Anunnaki grids and the Guardian grids, the others didn't have enough power in their grids to stop the cap from forming, so it was temporarily capped. The Falcon was temporarily capped. They were supposed to begin using the Anunnaki are supposed to begin using their grids to assist with the Christos realignment mission. Yeah, right. And they started to defect as soon as their little problem with the Draconians was taken care of. In 1998, defecting Anunnaki shut down the Guardian transmission lines because we had made the link into the Nibiruan data crystal grid, so they could be used together to close the Falcon wormhole. But they took advantage of that, and they started to shut down all of the Guardian grids. So Guardians couldn't even communicate. They couldn't have channeled if they wanted to, because they were blocking all the transmission lines. That's where there's only very few people who had literally direct physical contact with them who were able to keep the communication lines open and not have them intercepted by one of the other matrices, the Anunnaki matrices. September 12, 2000, the Anunnaki fully defect from the Emerald Covenant Treaty of Altair and join the United Intruder Resistance War Edict against the founders, because the Necromaton and Andromi Nephilim, Archangel Michael again, prompted the opposing sides of the Illuminati and the fallen angelics to get together, because if they got together and combined all their grids, they could overpower the Christos realignment mission. So that is what we're in the middle of right now. Now I want to show you just really, really quick what these grids are. I'm probably going to, okay, just really quick. This one is the Great White Lion, Guardian APIN. See where we get our Sphinx? Yeah, these were designed from the air. They were designed from spaceships. All right, this is what you would see on the spaceship. It was done as this to symbolize the Elohai Elohim Leonines. All right, this was their grid. So they literally left their mark on the planet. They put it where it needed to be as far as running the mathematics. But they were artistic about it as well. They left an insignia or a portrait of their symbol of who they were in the grids as well. So this is the Great White Lion APIN. We can go to that, and that one is the guardian of the verticals, okay, the axiotonal lines. It's positioned where literally there'd be like lots of little like geometricals inside of all of this, but this one was supposed to hold together the vertical axis of the planetary grids. Okay, go to the next one. Thank you. This poor little bird. Whoops. Yeah, okay. Now see, this one runs horizontal. This one was the other guardian one. It belonged to the Seraphi-Seraphim avian hominid races. So it was a bird, and it was keyed to D8 and D12 frequency, which gave it a pale gold color when you see it on incoming. So this was the golden eagle. This is the grid that was taken over by the Archangel Michael matrix people, by the Nephilim, and progressively its matrix reversed. Okay, this is the one that by the time we get done with what we're doing tonight, we're setting in motion the recoding of this back to its original divine blueprint. This one's guardian of the horizontals. It controls all the main ley lines. Now within all these structures, there is something called the turnstile machine, and it was put in by the Nephilim, the Archangel Michael people. And we'll show you in a minute the map on that, because that's what we're dealing with in Canada. The turnstile machine literally would take frequency from the Nibiru Dadic crystal grid, and it would run it through axiotonal or ley line 11 over into this particular machinery in the grids that they had put in the grids, and that's how they were controlling this whole matrix. And it literally had the potential to control all of the planetary grids very, very rapidly. Okay, could you go on real quick, honey?
I just point it out. When you look at the map that's coming up of the Canadians, notice that the key point 11 is where the beak is on the eagle.
Yeah.
And also that there's certain key points. Also, I was pointing out that the control point 11 is where the beak is. You'll notice that there'll be a clustering of points here, and also looking in this area. And the lines that run through the heart center of the bird are all significant, okay?
Yeah, you'll see on the other map when we get to that. Okay, this is just going to flash them by real quick. You can look at them more fully, you know, like later we can look at them more fully. These are just so you see what I'm talking about with the APIN systems. This one was the dragon that ran through that way. This one was the falcon, okay? The dotted line ones. Now these were done for the Voyagers books, so they were all like kind of doubled up on some of them just to show that they were there, because I had a page count, like a limitation on how much the publisher would let me put in the book as far as pages, because it costs more money to, you know, make them bigger. Okay, we'll put the next one up, Bubby, please.
Are you going to take off the phone, please?
I know, I have to go.